So welcome. We are here to look at making Jamboards and using those in instruction. I've got some different things for us to take a look at, probably more than 30 minutes worth. So please let me know your questions so we can focus our attention where it'll be most helpful to you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. So welcome. My name is Cindy Ossie. We are making and using Jamboards, and I hope you'll enjoy this session and come back and join KCM for upcoming sessions in the future. So we gave you a link that gives you an access to this Google document. What I'm trying to do with this is just kind of get us started on the kinds of things I think you might be wondering about with Jamboards. Many of you know, have been building ready to go Jamboards, and I've been getting questions by email of how to use them, how to share them with students. Some of those questions are not real easy, so we'll have to talk through kind of the options, and then you work at a school level to find the best option for you. But also I've had questions about how to make them, so people want to customize, and so I wanted to address some of those kinds of questions. So I do want to just get started and say, what is Jamboard? So Jamboard is a Google product. If you're in your Google Drive, actually I want to be back in this folder, you can start a new Jamboard. So just like you would start a Google slide or a Google document, we can open up and start that Google Jamboard. So I can create that. It is basically a whiteboard, and so it has many features built in that come with the whiteboard. So if you haven't played around with this, please encourage you just to jump in and create your own and do that, either following along with me or on your own. But we have tools that we can draw, and we can also control the color on that. We can control if it's a highlighter, we can even paint. So we have some different drawing tools. We can go ahead and erase that when we're done. We have just a simple sticky note, and I use these often to label for groups because they're really bright, they're colorful, they bring attention, they're easy to move around on the board. And often I'll have students, or I work with teachers, so I'll have teachers and I'll say, go to the board with your group number, but add your names to it. So I'd have that communication. So sticky notes become something that's very easy to edit and to move around. We can upload images, or we can do a copy and paste. We'll talk about that in a minute because that becomes one of the key features. Some newer tools that Jamboard added around September were the shapes. So we have lots of different shape tools. We can color those. We can have the outline in different colors, and we can fill it with different colors. So they have some simple tools. It's not as robust as something like Google Slides. You're not going to be able to do as many different images. But in some ways, I consider that as much a strength as a weakness. It limits the functionality, but it gives good basic functionality. So one of the things that's important to know about Jamboard is what it does well. So when is it a good choice? And what does it not do? And when is it not the right choice? So I love Jamboard. I do a lot in it, but I also don't limit myself to Jamboard. There are times when Google Slides work better. Certainly to create original images, Draw works better. And so it's important to know those strengths and those weaknesses. One other last tool on here is the laser pointer, which is kind of fun because it really helps with the teaching. So one of the things that we've tried to do is give teachers a lot of tools in Jamboard for really just display. And some of those things like the laser pointer and moving those images give you lots of functionality when you're primarily using your Jamboard as a display surface. So that's just some real basics, like what's already built in. Now, where we really get powerful, or what we think gets powerful, is where we start having those pre-made resources. So this is, we've already talked about this in one of the other KCM sessions, but hopefully everybody here has the link. We'll also put it into the chat. But this has been a project that has been kind of my guiding project for the last several months. It's been a lot of fun, very satisfying, and we hope that it's really helping you as you work with your students virtually. So it is a mix. It is not only Jamboard. It has mostly Jamboard, but it also has some Google Slides files in there. And it just plays to the different strengths and weaknesses. So there's things that Jamboard does well, and that's when we tried to use it. So we have everything from images or boards where the number cards are already there. Students might move them around, you might move them around. You might have some experience with that already. What I want to do now is give you an example of using one of these boards with students. And I'm going to walk you through how I would set it up for students to use and actually give you that invitation so you can get in there and use it, kind of seeing how the Jamboard could be a place where we put students together on the same work surface. I will caution it's a little bit easier usually with adult accounts because schools tend to have lots of security layers in place, and we'll talk about how you have to navigate those. But the basic structure. So suppose I want to use a game that's already made on the site. When I go through the site, let's do a multiplication game. So I click on the link and it's going to force you to make a copy. That's really important for a couple of reasons. One, it makes sure you're the owner of the copy, and so you can change it, you can edit it, and you're not going to interact like with another teacher who's downloaded this file. Also, it makes you the owner of the file, which is going to make it easier for you to share with students. So it is typically important that you are logged into a teacher's Google account and students are logged into a student Google account so that the school connects those and knows that a person who is safe is the one doing the sharing. So April, you had a question about how to edit that URL to make us do that. Those directions are on the handout. I just added those because I figured that would be a question, but I will show that in a minute. So that's a really good thing to know how to do. And sometimes that is what we want to do with students, is give every student their own copy. So that can be a helpful trick. So I've made that copy, or I'm making that copy now. I should have let it load while I was talking. It can be a little slow. I will say sometimes if you find our Jamboards are slow to load, it's because there are so many images in them. And you may find that it's helpful to delete some of those boards before you give them to students, and they'll be quicker to load. So you may find that, oh, I'm doing this one board, so I'm going to strip out the others and make sure the student has only the one that they need. In our typical format, we'll have a directions page. This is a multiplication game. And the basic structure is that the kids are going to be playing 2 on a board, or it's 2 player, but sometimes I'll do 2 against 2. And that way there's a little more conversation about strategy. This particular one, I could go either way on. So it's set up for the 2 players. And I would take that time with the students to introduce how to play it. So in this particular case, what's going on is we have a stack of cards here. And the way you're going to take your turn is you're going to delete the topmost image and you're going to take a look at what's pictured there. And so in this case, I have a 6x4 array, or an area model. And as I like on the board, I'm going to cover something that is equivalent to that or symbolically represents that. So I could cover a 6 times 4, or I could cover 6 of these 4s added together. So I have this choice. So the kids are going to play 3 in a row. They're going to be moving their counters to cover on the board. Okay, so that's the math. You have to take some time to explain the math and the rules of the game. I can do a Control-Z to undo that. Now, when I'm using it with students, probably what I'm going to do first is make a copy. So I have my original in my folder, and then I might name this something like multiplication match, and I might label that with the date, you know, class A, whatever name's going to help me know when and why I'm using it. And it'll take a little bit for that to load, but I'm doing that so my original is left alone and I can get this ready for students. Next thing I'm going to think about is how many students I have, and I need to decide if I want them all on the same master document or if I'm giving them their own. I tend to, especially in sort of this kind of size, this sort of 15 to 20 size, put everybody on the same Jamboard, but on different pages in the Jamboard. So when I look at this, there's 3 different versions of the game. What I'm going to start doing is making copies. So I'm selecting this duplicate. I'm going to be making copies of that version that's the red and the yellow. And I might think through how many copies that I need. I'm going to put you guys in four in a room in a moment, or just kind of assign four to a room just so you have a sense and other people to talk to. Then typically what I'll do is take one of those sticky notes and I'll say like room 1 will go here. And we're not going to spend long in these rooms, just maybe 3 or 4 minutes, but I want you to have a chance to navigate this, and the Zoom rooms are going to let us kind of assign you to rooms so you'll know where to go as well. So I'm putting these sticky notes on the pages, and that's going to tell you what room to go to or what board to go to. It's really important to clarify that the board number, this is board 3, doesn't match the room number. So make sure your students know to follow the sticky note and not the number at the top. That's been a common place of confusion where people end up on the wrong board because they're paying attention to the board number instead. So you can just see how I'm copying that little sticky note and putting it on these new boards. Okay, since my focus isn't the math, but the system, I'm just going to do 4 rooms. But now I'm going to show you about the links. So what I want to do now with the link is I'm going to create a link that's going to let all of you access the same game. So this works well here where we have kind of adult level access. You may have to use a little different approach with students, and we'll talk about that. So I'm going to copy the link, but I need to kind of change how this is set up. I need to make sure that everybody going into this has editing privileges. That's what's going to let you move stuff around on the board. So now I have a version of the link that will let you copy the link, or sorry, let you edit the file. So I'll copy that link, and I'm going to post that in chat. And I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and just click on that link, and you are going to be on that board. And you can see from the teacher side, I'm seeing these little images pop up. That's telling me that you guys are doing it, which is exactly what we want, and it's very cool. If students are logged into their Google accounts, then they actually pop up with their names, and that becomes really nice. Like you actually know exactly who's logged in. And so we have this nice system here where we can see who's logged in and what they're doing. Now, I'm just going to put you in Zoom rooms for about 2 minutes. And what I want you to do is just join your group on there. You can take a few turns, but just get comfortable more with the Jamboard itself. Think about what your questions are and come back and ask me those questions. So just 2 minutes. And I'm going to, I know it was really quick, but I could tell from my end that you were on the board. So I'm going to share that briefly just to kind of say why I like having everybody on that same board. Because I can flip through and I can see the progress groups are making or the lack of progress and know which groups I need to tune into. Also, if your game is mostly symbolic, you could keep people in the main room. So I could have you keep playing, but in the main room. And then their communication then needs to become take your turns and type it and only kind of talk when you have a question. Or we could even slow down and kind of say, okay, room 1 folks, or you know, Marty and Elizabeth, your turn to show us what you're doing. So there's lots of different options with that. And I don't know that there's any one way to do it. And it depends a lot on your kids and your comfort with putting them in breakout rooms and your software. Like I say, there's not one way to do these things. You guys had a chance to talk, but not much time. What questions do you have right now?
I'm like,
Not sure what to ask? Go ahead.
I would hate to take the time from our 30 minutes, but I would need to see that again, how to link it
yeah.
so that my kids can move that board.
To see which again?
So that the kids on the other side of the computer can manipulate and move their token.
Okay. So what was it? The link that you needed to see again? Okay.
Is that the first step to?
So the link was a key piece to that. So let's talk a little bit more about like, how do I get the students on there?
Yeah.
And this is going to depend a lot on the options that your school is already using for how you communicate to students. Because if you're using Google Classroom, that's the easiest. And it may even be worth setting up Google Classrooms if you know you're going to be doing this frequently. The nice thing about Google Classrooms is they're going to give you a way to assign any kind of Google file, a Google Slide or a Google Jam. And they're assigned within all the safety measures, so you know they're going to have access. You also can assign things either that each person gets their own copy, or you can assign like this group gets a shared copy, or everybody is on the same copy. So you could control, like the way I did it here, we were all interacting on the board I owned and I could see what you were doing. And you can assign things that way in a Google Classroom. But you could also assign it more as like a homework piece where I'm just going to maybe take one of these boards and I'll say, so before tomorrow, play a game either against a sibling or a parent or even yourself and play both the red and the yellow role and do that. And that's your homework. In which case I'd want maybe every student to have their own board. Also in Google Classroom, it keeps the teacher connected. So that's one option, and that's one thing to kind of talk with your school and think about the logistics for it. And by the way, I'm kind of referring to on this handout, there is this section that's basically labeled sharing jams. And so I'm kind of going through some of those options. So Google Classroom is one of those. The other is these options through the links. And so when you do links, it's in the share option in the upper right-hand corner. And there become two ways that you can share links. And there in fact is a third, but built into it are two. One is, so I can do this kind of change. I can have people on as an editor or as a viewer. So viewer might be useful if it's static. I just need them to read off of the board. And that's, so it's kind of limited. I probably wouldn't do that much with jams, but I do that with Google Slides because there's something I'm working through. So viewers is going to let them see it. Editor is what's going to let them get on and use it, which is what I did with you all. So this is the menu that let me give you a link that lets you hop on. Okay, force a copy is the third option, and that one's really interesting. These directions are on your handout, so I want you to see it, but the details are written down. Because I have to edit the URL. And Jacqueline, I got this from you, so thank you so much. So I'm going to copy that link, and I need to open some kind of Word or email, something that I can put that link down so I can edit it. So let's take a look at how that link is structured. It's a Jamboard, and then it's got this massive file name. And then we have this backslash, and this last part tells the system what access the person has. And I'm going to delete that and replace it with the word copy. So I'm actually editing that URL. Let me undo that and let me actually leave the copy of this so you can see the two of them side by side. So that was the original. I deleted that last chunk and I'm replacing it with the word copy. Okay. If I were to give you the top link, you would be in my file moving stuff. And that may be what I want, and that's when I use it. If I want you to have your own copy, and this is how everything on the website is set up, then I use this new one that has that copy ending, and I put it in the chat so you guys can experience it. Now, if you click on that, it's going to force you to make a copy of that game we were just looking at. Hopefully that works. Somebody gives me a thumbs up if it does. Because it's computers. You always got to test because you never know if you have some random character in there. Okay, D gave me a thumbs up, so that worked. So you can see, so it's kind of awkward because you have to edit the URL. But that is unfortunately the process. Okay. Another option you might consider, so if the Google Classroom is something that's just not gonna, that's not how you want to approach it, it might be realistic to set up a shared Google folder, in which case the kids would know to click on their drive and be in a specific folder to open things up. So another way to share things would be to put things like in a student's folder. But that takes navigating some of the Google Drive stuff. It's kind of limited what I can do here. In a way, what I'm trying to do is get you to know that some of these options exist, then talk to maybe the tech people at your school and say, well, what are the systems we're already using? What are the ways students already know to access? You know, if I'm using something like Dojo, then a link's probably going to work better. If we have Google Classroom, then that's better. If they're used to opening up files in their drive, then that's going to work better. We can share directly. So one of the things I didn't get into was, again, we're kind of all live in the same system. So there's people that I share with routinely. I just type in their email address and it'll send them an email link and they can click on that email link. So I could add my students directly if they're used to opening up their email and clicking on the link. So the more you can tap into systems that, you know, are already in place, the better this is going to be. And right now it's just like, well, what systems do your students have for sharing Google files? That's what I would research and play around with. Okay.
Those of you that are sharing these with other teachers, you have systems in place that you're already using to share resources with each other. This would fit into that system quite nicely.
Gotcha. So April, you're talking, so now let's take this last 5 minutes or so, and I'll stay around and answer any individual questions you have, but we'll take the last formal 5 minutes or so, talk a little bit about making Jamboards. And April, unfortunately, so April's asking a little bit about copying images. You're not gonna like my answer. This is where Jamboard is weakest. You can put things into it, you can't take things out of it. So, you know, if you're having trouble doing it, it's because it doesn't happen yet. And that's the reality. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and back up and kind of talk about what we have available for you. So if you're interested in making your own Jamboard, and I think that's really awesome because you already have these classroom games that you're used to using, you have these things that you know you like to do. You may find something that does something similar in what we've created, and we've certainly have tried to hit some of those basics, but you may have a game or something. So this particular chunk right here is our attempt to try and support that as best we can. The first is a video, and it goes through some of the basics of how to copy images into a board, editing, things like that. The other things we've created are some basic boards to get you started. And the reason that's important is because you can't kind of like find this thing on this board and this thing on this board and copy them and put them together. Jamboard won't let you do it. You can't like copy out of a Jamboard. At least I can't. I haven't found a way. And when I've researched it, I haven't found anything to suggest that that works. So we've tried to give you some basic Jamboards to say, okay, I have a game that I love. Oh, that's not what I meant to click on. I have a game that I love. Oh, okay, I gotta fix the link. That explains something. I click on the link and it gives you some of the basic components that you might need to make a game. So I'm making that copy. It's taking a moment to load. And what we've tried to put
Our friends clicked on it too.
is some of the typical game tokens you might need and virtual dice, and kind of show you, you got a little bit of sense of that in that multiplication game, but you'll see how we do it with dice images as well. So I come over here and I have lots of options on dice. So for example, if the game had called for rolling 2 dice, if they have physical dice, use them, right? We're not trying to replace that if you have it. This is if you don't have it. Then what we have here is you delete the top image, and now I have the equivalent of rolling 2 dice. So I get a 5 and a 3. And I delete that image, and now I have a 4 and a 5. So whatever game that I might have played that needed rolling 2 dice, I can replace that by having the stacked set of images that are 2 dice. And so kids go through and they delete. So what I'm doing is deleting the top image and getting the next image. So if I needed some kind of game board, and I should have prepped some kind of game board, I didn't think to do that. But if I had, let's see, math game, and we're just going to go for something that doesn't quite work. But okay, I know Sudoku makes no sense for this moment, but I have an image that is my game board. I'm going to use my snipping tool. And my snipping tool is built into my computer. You probably have one. If not, there's multiple free snipping tools that you can download. I'm going to make a snip of this image. And so it lets me just grab that image. So anything I have is a PDF. I could grab that image. I can go back to that Jamboard, and I did a Control-C and a Control-V. So I did Control-V and I pasted it. If this image is already saved to my computer, I could upload it to there. So if it's a hard copy, I might just take a photo and upload it. And, you know, so there's a couple different images. And you can copy pieces within a board. So now I have these game tokens that I can copy over from this main board. So I'm doing Control-C and a Control-V. And so now I have these pieces. I know this doesn't make sense as a game, but it's the technicalities that I was wanting to show you, the techniques. The video goes into more detail, so I encourage you to check that. And then contact me directly if you have questions, and we'll go into more detail. But if I go back and I say, oh, I love this image in this Jamboard and I want to put it in this other one, I haven't found any way to do that other than to make a new snip of it. So yeah, about the best you can do is just say, I like that image. Now I'm going to take a snip of that image and put it into the new Jamboard. But actual direct copy and paste, it doesn't let us do that. It will let us grab images from a Google slide, but not vice versa. There's also, to my knowledge, no way to merge Jamboards, to say I want to take a board from here and a board from here and put it together for a student. I'm crossing my fingers that they improve that. They are working on Jamboard, and like I say, had some really nice improvements just a couple months ago. So if we get that update, we will sing that Hallelujah chorus and have that better functionality. But it is probably the biggest limitation we have with it. So that was a lot, and perhaps not as coherent as we could have hoped, but so much of it's on this resource embedded in here. So we have ready to go games, we have videos, talk about how to use them. We have these supporting Jamboards with a video about how to make your own. I've added just today 10 and 1 dice. So if you got some place value games and you wanted a customized die that was rolling either a +10 or +1, we just added that today. If you have questions about that, I'll be happy to share that. I know I'm running a little bit late, but I was going to say the other question I get a lot is just like, where do you get your images? I don't make them in Jamboard. So I give you an example in this handout of like how I make them in PowerPoint. And I just make the image and snip and clip it. So use whatever software is comfortable for you. But that gives you kind of an example, like how do I get number dice? I make a visual that looks like number dice. How do I get dot dice? I make a visual that looks like dot dice. We're happy at KCM to help you do these things as you need help, but some people like to know where that's coming from and the versatility to make your own. So that's how I do that. That's the behind the scenes. So questions. Oh, there's been a lot going on in chat. So cool. I wasn't watching the chat, so I apologize for that.
You had a small army of friends helping you out.
So you guys, there are questions left in chat that I need to answer. Okay, then I think I wrapped that up. I think that wraps up the formal session, but I'm happy to stick around and answer any individual questions that you might have, and also requests. So let us know what kinds of things you'd like to have added to our website.